First off, I have to thank this commenter for bringing this subject back up to me because when it first hit the scene, I went into it and I think I did a couple of videos at least on this subject, but I didn't really go any further than that because it really just boiled down to here we go once again. Our history has been written in ways that benefit the current belief systems. So that means much, if not most, of the information that we get is a lie, but also what is the information that has been hidden from us? So the two sides to that lie. But the point I want to reference in this video is what has happened over the time of people investigating and realizing these perspectives, the time that has passed from then until now, because mudfloods dropped on the internet a little after Flat Earth hit the mainstream YouTube internet scene. And once I started looking into it, it was yet another topic-based truth unveiling. So what I've referenced in previous videos is that there's information that's beneficial to healing and empowering people, and then there's topic-based threads of information. And they're interwoven in many different ways, but in reference to the side effects, the negative side effects that can occur, we don't really realize what happens when we get in these cycles of unveiling information. Because there are positive benefits and then there are negative benefits. What I've shared from my observation of truther communities like the Flat Earth, the so-called conspiracy theories, what I've realized is that if people do not do the internal work, if people do not have a drive to actually make change, what will happen is that they get enveloped in the information, and then the information becomes the distraction, the new distraction. This is something that has been weaponized in the mainstream media. The information becomes the envelopment, the entanglement, the distraction. And the only action that comes in reference to those distractions is based upon the people who have the power, the people who we've empowered and given the power to. This is why the government and governments around the world are so hell-bent on war and fear, ignorance, disempowerment, and keeping people fighting themselves. Because once you get consumed by the illusions, whatever the perspectives that they pump out there with the media, they can move the actions based upon where they want to move society. So the people are in this illusion that they are part of some kind of movement because they vote, because their emotions, they're angry, they are aware of, what Putin is doing and what the vaccines are about and what happened in 9/11 and all this stuff that gets leaked to us from a particular perspective, but really, if anything, at best, is only a piece of the truth. And most of the times, it is not based in any truth at all once you pull out all the bullshit. So this is this emotion-based perspective based upon an awareness-based perspective. The government, the people behind the scenes, they have an awareness-based perspective. So they manipulate the emotion-based perspective, which is the masses. This is why the media is intertwined with the government and the governments of the world. This is why the public education is intertwined with the government. They have government mandates of information. This is why the actual history needs to be defended against, and they sold it to you with emotion again, with this whole critical race theory term that's out there saying that, oh yeah, well, the actual history it just makes us feel bad. Like kids and people in the education system shouldn't feel bad about history, so we should just not tell it. The same way they lie to you about events that are going on. Oh, we don't want to make the society unstable, so we won't tell them the whole truth. They're doing the same thing. And what is it based upon? Emotions and your childlike emotions. They have to be the mother and the father. They have to take care of you. So in order to do that, since they have been empowered with that responsibility, they will just lie to you. And what has been happening within these so-called conspiracy communities, like the flat earth, like the mud floods, is that the information has become the cycle that maintains the distraction. And since you have followers involved, since you have on some channels money that's involved, in order to keep these cycles flowing, you have to maintain some kind of rhythm. And if you haven't done the internal work to focus that rhythm towards empowering people and constantly growing, then you will be subject based. And when you get in that rhythm of subject based unveiling of information, that's when you have the illusion of movement, but you're actually stagnant because there's no drive there. You're on a treadmill. You're working out. Your brain is getting a lot of information, but your body is not moving anywhere. That's why when I looked into mud floods, I said, okay, well, here's another lie. Totally down with them lying about history, lying about the time, lying about the people, the ancient peoples, lying about things that could possibly happen in this reality, such as a mud flood to reset, such as ancient people building all kinds of structures that today people are not even able to do. I've been referencing this. This is one reason why I didn't go too much into the mud floods, because I've referenced this with the pyramids. I've referenced this with sacred sites like Machu Picchu and Sacsayhuaman. And a lot of these buildings, a lot of the architecture that is just beyond all this sticks and bricks bullshit that we're living in today. Even ancient technology has been hidden. Like, how did they make those structures? What technology was used? What intelligence was used? So this fits very much into my perspective storyline. But it's a subcategory to the information and perspectives that will empower you. And what I've seen as what will empower people, the majority of people, is to focus the information and the energy on the people who have been most disempowered, to present information and perspectives towards the people who have the most potential to rise up within themselves and beyond, but first within themselves, and do something about this situation. Not just our situation, but the situation. And I've realized in these communities, in these flat earth and mud flood communities, that is not something that the majority, and I'll say so-called white people, they cannot empathize with. They don't care about it. In many cases, they will say something is wrong with you. And this is what happened in a comment that I just received on the last What is Racism video. Somebody basically saying, I followed your work for some time, and then I realized that you were just focused too much on race and racism, and I found some deeper perspectives, and it's about mud floods. So basically just dismissing all the information, dismissing the perspectives, and really showing the lack of empathy and even sympathy for what's going on, dismissing completely that the information that has been shared and the work that people are doing from finding out this information, from going to the depths of what's going on in these perspectives, pretty much saying all of that is just irrelevant. And what's deeper is to get into the repetitive rhythms of seeing certain things from the perspectives within the mud floods and the flat earth, and just continue focusing on the lies. See, they project onto me as if that's what I'm doing because they can't empathize with the information. But there's a reason why I focus on this, because, like I've said in previous videos, when you're approaching somebody wounded on the battlefield, there's an order to what you're looking for in order to help this individual. If somebody can't breathe, if somebody's bleeding out, if somebody's in shock, you're not going to worry about the little splinter that they have in their finger. You have to approach the situation based upon the individual. And right now we have people who are bleeding out. We have people who can't even breathe. We have people who are in shock. You can die from shock. You can bleed to death. You can suffocate in seconds, in minutes. And if you don't deal with that situation, these individuals are going to die. And what's happening with these truth communities is that they have the ability to assess little cuts and little scrapes, little fractures, little broken bones here and there in the system, in the people. And they're like, ooh, look, I fixed this splinter. Ooh, I put a Band-Aid on this wound. This person broke their finger. And I put a splint on it. They're going to be okay. And that's what's happening in these truth communities. They're focusing on the splinters. They're focusing on the broken, fingers, the little scrapes and the little wounds here and there. And they're avoiding the massive bleeds, the suffocating, and the shock that people are dealing with today. And since they feel embarrassed that other people are focusing on these giant wounds, this bleeding out, they feel like their contribution to the wounded, they feel it's insignificant. So they can't even validate the work that you're doing. They have to downplay you. They have to dismiss you. They have to say you're going in the wrong direction. Why are you focusing on the bleeding of racism and prejudice and bigotry that's going on? Why are you focusing on that? Why are you focusing on the so-called justice system still lynching people on the streets today? That's what they want you to focus on. Why are you focusing only on black information? Haven't you researched mud floods? And I'll link a video in this description right now to show you what happens in these communities. The individual who left that comment downplaying my research, my information, and saying that there's a deeper perspective and it's mud floods and you have to research. He referenced me to this channel, this guy named John Levy. I watched a few of his videos. And like I said, they're basically all the same. It's just information. He just puts this information, these perspectives, these Google images, is a bunch of old stuff and saying that it's a lot older than that. And these perspectives, and then the people do the work of saying, yep, they lied to us. Once again, here we go. And I'm not saying that's not true. What I'm saying is that the implication that you put out there can actually do more harm than any good. And in this one video, I'm going to link in the description, you'll see for yourself what they're doing with this mud flood information is trying to rewrite history from the rewritten history. So instead of going to the depths of why things are the way they are today, so you have to disregard a lot of the things that are going on today. If you have a history that is different from the people who've been lying to you about history, then you have the capability to write history completely. You have to, you can perceive it from any way possible. If this is what's happening, if they've lied to you about history, then you can see history from however you want. And that's what's happening in these truther circles. Flat earthers are saying, well, they lied about the earth, so the earth is actually this. When they're actually theorizing, they're doing the exact same thing that the system is doing. Creating theories, but saying it to you as if it's fact. Because if they don't say it to you like it's fact, they can't have a following. They're not going to follow somebody who's just loosely presenting this information. They have to sell it with confidence. So in the mudflood community, the way they sell it with confidence is to present like images, pictures. So that sets the standard for reality. And then the confidence comes from being able to compile all of this information. And boom, there goes your new truth. And then since they don't say like, this is the truth, you piece together what the truth is based upon the collection of information that they put out there. Same thing's happening in the flat earth community. All these different things about the North Pole, the possibilities of what's going on up there, the extra land. And I'm not saying this stuff doesn't exist. I'm just saying I don't know. For myself, I don't know what it actually is, what the history actually is. I don't know what's at the North Pole. I don't know what the land looks like. I don't know what comes in and out of the North Pole. I don't know any of this shit. I know there's questions about what it is. I know there's questions about so-called Antarctica. I haven't made sure that there's more land across the ice wall. And there's a power in that. There's a huge power in I don't know, because you continue to learn and unveil information. And it leaves the perspective open to grow. When you get into these communities, you shut down the perspective. You shut down the potential to grow, because you need to maintain. You're starting to build up around the foundation, and you have to protect that foundation with more information that is specific based upon that foundation. You can't go beyond that foundation. If you do, that house that you built on that foundation will start to deteriorate. So these people are just researching more and more information from a particular perspective, from a particular vision, angle, and not allowing themselves to go anywhere else. So in this one video that I'm linking in the description, this individual goes into showing all these Native American houses that were like Greco-Roman architecture, and pretty much implying that the Native Americans, it's seeming like he's implying that white people were here because of Tartaria, and they are actually interwoven with the Native American culture, and the real Cherokee, the real Choctaw, the real Muskogee, the Creek, they are the images that they show where these Native Americans look white. They're the original ones. So because Tartaria existed and they've hidden all this information, they have all these structures that are like Greco-Roman looking. The implication is that white people are everywhere and are actually at the foundation of all of these cultures that have built these structures and cities and things before the mud flood. So the stories, all the history, this is why they're hiding history. So in telling that story, this individual, this talking about Native American history, said nothing about the so-called black Indians. Nothing in here. And this is the most fucked up thing that happens in these communities. In order to stay on that foundation, in order to continue to build up their house, they have to dismiss your perspectives. This individual did a whole fucking video about so-called original American history, and not one fucking black person, so-called black person, was in that video. In fact, this individual doubled down on the $5 Indian perspective and said not only were the original people here, no, the Cherokee were white, the Choctaw were white, the Muskogee were white. Why? Because they found these images? How is that any different than the round earth, the globe earth images sold to you by NASA? So this individual is basically selling you an entirely reversed perspective of what our family members have been sharing with us, and they're selling it to you based upon internet images that they find and piece together and saying, oh, well, this fits our story. No, you've been looking for that which fits your story, and then you piece them all together. And you know it's bullshit because they have to disregard other threads of information. That's when you know it's total fucking bullshit. It's being sold to you as the real truth that they're hiding from you. If this was the real truth, why the fuck are you just completely ignoring and not referencing at all the melanated indigenous Americans? If what you were selling, they say this information, like, oh, just think for yourself. Here are the images, and they're just fucking paintings and Google images and Wikipedia shit. Here's what it is. Look at this. This Choctaw person has European features. This Cherokee person has European features. This proves Tartaria. We've been lied to. This doesn't look like a house that a Native American would live in. They should be living in teepees. So yeah, I'm not going to go too far in this thread of information. I just wanted to throw this thread out there just so people, some of the newer people to this channel who weren't aware of this fits into the storyline of all the other information that I've shared in the past. Mud floods, the not heliocentric universe, the no forest on flat earth information that goes into the giants and the giant trees, the crystalline structure, atmosphere, environment, like all this stuff that's going on. Those are all subcategories to the overall, the bigger lies. And like I said, the reason why I focus on the information that I focus on is because I realize, like a combat medic going up to somebody who's bleeding on the battlefield, I'm focusing on the bleeds. I'm focusing on the blocked airways. I'm focusing on the shock. I'm focusing on the biggest problems that could lead to this injured person's death and trying to deal with that. And because the system sees that as a threat, they have co-opted that perspective. See, these truthers, they don't see it that way. They see it in another way. They say, oh, well, the mainstream media is talking about race and racism, so it must be low energy. It must not be that deep a perspective. There's no racism in Tartar. There's no racism in flat earth. There's no racism in no forest for, you see, there's no racism in syncretism. It's all about energy and all this. You see how people can get focused on this subject-based shit? And if you're talking about something very confidently, they take offense to that. They say, oh, what do you mean? Why aren't you focusing on mud floods as much as you do about racism, huh? Well, this is fucking why. If you hadn't known, let me set the record straight. This is why. And like I said, these individuals cannot empathize with that. They see that the mainstream media is using it and they say, oh, well, you're wrong because you're doing what the mainstream media wants you to fall into. You're low energy. It's like, okay. Could it be that the mainstream media is trying to make you think that way so you don't do anything about it? Could it be that they're co-opting that information because they know that empowering the people who have been the most attacked over the last few hundred years? Could it be that they know that we're the biggest threat to their system? So they're co-opting the way we should go about it by putting shit out there like Black Lives Matter, by demonizing us with the whole stop Asian hate shit and saying, oh, well, implying that you have to stop Asian hate because angry black people are attacking them. They're not saying that, white people are attacking them. No. And why the hell is that coming out at the same time? This is orchestrated chaos, orchestrated ignorance, because they know it can tap into the people that are existing on that shallow thread of information that are only going to go so far. This is what the internet and social media does. It doesn't allow you to think for yourself because you're following people. You can't really feel it. You can see it and have a visual definition of what that feeling feels like, but you can't really feel it. The information coming from these shallow-based, information-based, truther channels and perspectives is maxing out at sympathy, energetic sympathy. But in order to get into being able to empathize with what's going on, you have to do that work yourself. And you cannot be consumed by the linear threads of sympathy. If you get consumed by the sympathetic threads of linear truth, these linear communities, then you start to demonize and dismiss people who are coming at the same information, with the same information. This is why they attack my channel, because I reference mud floods, I reference flat earth, I reference no forest, I reference all this stuff. But my focus is not on either one of them. In fact, I say it's just a side dish to the information, the perspectives that I come from. And that's threatening to them. They feel a certain way. They'll say, oh, well, that's lesser information. It's not deep enough. Go into mud floods. That's deeper. It's like, okay, if you want to see that, fine. But that's them projecting onto you. Here's this narcissistic shit again. You can't have your own thoughts, your own perspectives. It's a threat to them. Their narcissistic tendencies start to come about, and then they'll either attack you or dismiss you. And in many cases, it's both. So their main channels, these channels, they're not going to, these mud flood people, the flat earthers, they're not going to spend their energy attacking because they don't want to expose themselves. They don't want to lose followers. So what they'll do is just focus so much on their own perspective, and that focus is inherently dismissive. So this focus in this video, this focus of this individual saying that basically the Cherokee, the Choctaw, and all these other Native American cultures, because of these images, are European people, because these images exist, that's the way it is. What also are you doing when you say that? You're dismissing but they're not actually going to overtly, they're not going to, say that stuff, but they're going to imply it. And that's that cowardice bullshit that happens in these sympathy-based communities. But when you get into empathy, when you get to actual feeling what's going on, it changes your approach. You can feel what's going on. You can feel that certain people are suffering. Certain people are bleeding out. Certain people are having trouble breathing. Other people are in shock. All the shit that we have to deal with in reference to post-traumatic slave disorder. Like, why are you focusing on that? Shame on you. There's mud floods out there. That's a deeper issue. Get the fuck out of here. Who the fuck do you think you are? Hundreds of years, generations of people who are dealing with this. Genetics, this shit changing our fucking genetics. This is what epigenetics is. Being attacked psychologically, physically, spiritually, for hundreds of years, changing your genetics, making you act, feel, and respond a certain way in this reality. No, you shouldn't focus on that. The arrogance of these people, the ignorance of these people. In fact, invalidating you and saying that that stuff shouldn't matter. Fine. This is why I don't fuck with these groups of people, these communities, and these people who are focused so much on this one stuff. Like I said, the information is going to exist. You don't need a damn community of people holding hands around this thread of information. Hey, we're the mud flooders. We're the flat earthers. Flat motherfucking power. Yeah, here we go. We're winning. What the fuck is wrong with you? This shit is ridiculous. It's childish. It's loose. It has no drive. It has no focus. It has no motivation to do anything other than to consume your time. And in that consuming of your time, they have to dismiss other perspectives that are actually moving. When people come about this information, realizing that they're not from Africa, dealing with post-traumatic slave disorder, seeing the system for what it is in reference to the depths of what racism actually is, when they see this shit, they're healing themselves. They're actually moving. These channels, these individuals selling you these perspectives, they can't do that. The closest that they'll get to doing that is having a foundation of that information and then talking about current event shit. So it has the illusion of movement. Oh, flat earthers are talking about Will Smith. Flat earthers are talking about mud floods. But you're getting one channel of information that goes into a wall and just talking about another channel of information that goes into another wall and then bouncing back and forth between those walls. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with this video. For people who are unaware of these threads that are out there, I would say check them out and see where I'm coming from when I share my perspective of the mud floods and the people who are heading that charge of information. most people who watch this channel are already aware of the flat earth information and the lies from the heliocentric universe and all that other stuff. Another one is it's a documentary out there to check that is another thread, another angle. I think it's called No Force on Flat Earth. I'll try to find it and then link it in the description. But that's another thread to check out. But the point is that these threads, this information, you can be aware of this information all at the same time. You don't have to be in mud floods and downplay or dismiss people who are unveiling the truth about the indigenous peoples around the world. But like I said, this is happening with a specific group of people who are having difficulty finding their roots. So they have to get enveloped within these communities to generate these artificial roots. But when you're doing that, you're dismissing entire groups of people, entire threads of information because of your emotion, because of your need to have something. And a lot of people are doing it because they have a need to get out of that shame and that guilt that comes from being a part of something that is fucked up. When I share the information that I share about racism and the origins of what happened to our people here, that's not to push shame and guilt. That's your reaction. It's to share the information. If you react with shame and guilt, that's personal. That's for you to deal with. The system knows that people are going to react in shame and guilt because emotion usually is the first response. So the conspiracy circle controlled opposition tactic is to get people consumed in these loose theoretical communities because they can slow down their emotions and focus their perspectives on something that might be true. But since it's the authority of intellect and information, then they're never going to say anything about this shit. If they do, it's going to be for another control measure. So people are just creating their own authority of information because they don't want to deal with the emotion and the reality for the most part. And that's what these communities are. And if they have to dismiss you and downplay your perspectives and talk shit about you and project onto you, tell you that you're wrong, they will. And they have to do that in order to empower themselves. When we share information about our history, what we've had to deal with, Neely Fuller Jr., the information Dane Calloway is sharing, Dr. Francis Cress Welsing, Dr. John Henrik Clarke, Malcolm X, Dr. Khalid Muhammad, like all these people, when we share the information that they've already shared, you can take it two ways. You can see, oh, this information is for these people to empower themselves, or this information is to make me feel bad. This is what happened in this critical race theory shit. It ain't got nothing to do with you, your narcissistic ass. The truth needs to be heard. It needs to be known. Oh, but it makes our kids feel shameful and guilty. We need to outlaw it. This is what these grown-ass people are doing in these mud flood communities. Why are you talking about racism? You're very intelligent, and I used to be very much into your information when you were talking about what makes me feel good. Mud floods and flat earth makes me feel good, but once you started talking about race, no more, no sirree Bob, I'm out of here. You're low energy. I'm going in a deeper perspective. Dive right into that mud flood bucket and stay in there and swim around. And the icing on the cake, which I did not know until, that's why I said thank you to this person for leaving that shitty ass comment to make me look into this information again. I did not know that they were basically saying that Native Americans, they're taking that shit over. It's two things happening there. They're saying Native Americans. Oh my God. I'm not even going to go in there. You see for yourself. Watch the video for yourself and see. You'll see what I'm talking about. The other side, you'll see what they're trying to do when they sell that information. But like I said, the other part of it is dismissing the melanated Americans, the Indians, the so-called black Indians. Not a fucking word about that information in this. And they have to do that in order to sell, build up, put themselves, like he mentioned in that one video, showing you images of white Cherokees, white Choctaw, and then saying they were part of an advanced culture. They were part of an advanced and cultured society. They were part of an advanced and cultured technology that has been hidden by the government. And you can see they built these Greco-Roman structures because it couldn't have been you. Because in your people? Yeah, right. No. Look at these pictures. It was us. We did this. We're the advanced and cultured people of the world. So anyway, I'm closing out. I'm done. Done with this shit. Not a damn thing is new after all these years. In the positive. In the negative, it's some new shit that's just like blowing my mind right now. And I'm going to keep looking into it and find some more. But man, if you hadn't looked into mud floods and Tartaria and no forest on flat earth and even so-called flat earth, if you haven't looked into that, check it out. I put a bunch of stuff in the playlist section on this channel, so you can look into that. But yeah, see for yourself. And if you find yourself consumed by these threads, by these communities, ask yourself, when does it end? What is the end game there? What are you going to do now? Is that all the information that's out there? Are you done? Is Tartaria and mudfloods the answer to the world? And just because you know that information, does that discredit or dismiss the perspectives that people are talking about what's happening in the modern times, what's going on now? Should we not be talking about that? And if you're in these communities, ask these people like John Levy, ask him what he thinks about the information that people like Dane Calloway are sharing. Ask him what he thinks about Dr. Joy DeGruy. Ask them about this information and see where they come from. I want to know specifically what you're saying about this information, because you're implying in many ways that we don't exist, and specifically that you don't care. Your implication is obvious that you don't care. But like I said, we don't expect you to be able to empathize with where we're coming from. But if you're putting apathy out there, now this is our problem, and we will say something about that. We can deal with your sympathy-based, linear perspectives on certain issues and certain threads of information. That's understandable, because it's part of the process. We don't expect you to be able to empathize with our perspectives. But when you start selling apathy out there, now you've invited us into that conversation. And we will be addressing that situation.